Hello everybody, we've got a new update from the Old School RuneScape team. This is the Grand Exchange. The day has finally come. The Grand Exchange is here. Grab your cash stacks and loot piles, it's time to get trading. So let's have a look at what exactly the Grand Exchange is going to entail in Old School RuneScape. The Grand Exchange is finally here. Head northwest of Varrock to get trading with the Grand Exchange. They've kept everything about the Grand Exchange as close as possible to the original version of the Grand Exchange, the one that most players will be familiar with, excluding a few additional features. In the coming weeks they'll be polling a selection of our feedback requests. These might be extra buttons and features that they could adapt from the RuneScape 3's Grand Exchange, or completely new different ideas for Old School's Grand Exchange. So if there's an extra feature you'd really like to see, let them know. So let's have a look at the initial prices. The GE has initial prices for all items, largely taken from activity on the old trading post and from Zybez's excellent trading guide, among other sources. Players are free to ignore these prices completely and to offer whatever they like. Over time, as we trade on the Grand Exchange, the system will adjust its prices towards the true market values of the items. We should expect a lot of large changes in prices over the next few weeks, as the Grand Exchange makes it easier for buyers and sellers to find what they want. So there'll be less need to pay premium prices for obscure items, and a lot of miscellaneous items will be being sold on the GE. So if a guide price doesn't look right to you, give it some time to adjust, and try and sell or buy whatever you feel like. Next, let's have a look at buy rate limits. The Grand Exchange has limits to the rate at which a player can buy items. These were introduced to discourage players from trying to mess around with the economy by monopolizing critical items. Old School RuneScape has these limits too. For launch, they've deliberately kept them on the conservative side. With no limit on prices players may offer, price manipulation is considerably easier here than it was in 2007. Although, over time, they expect they'll be able to relax these limits. Next, price manipulation. Players, or groups of players, should not attempt to manipulate the price of items through controlling their supply or demand. They're considering this to be a reportable offence under item scamming. They have multiple back-end systems that will allow them to identify manipulation proactively, and will be keeping a very close eye on any attempts at price manipulation through the Grand Exchange. Next, item sets. The exchange clerks can pack items into sets, like the trading post used to do. For this update, they've added a few more sets to the list. There are a lot more they'd like to do in future updates when time permits. Next, grimy herbs. For the grimy herb graphic, they've currently preserved the old school herb model, so clean herbs look exactly like the identified herbs always did. However, they've had a few players saying they'd rather change the model so it would match what RuneScape 3 used over the years. And if it's something the community seems to be interested in, they'll be polling that soon. Personally, I think I'd prefer the old school model. So, in other news, the second birthday party has now come to an end, and they've removed all the leftover cake just before it got mouldy. They've moved a goblin near Lumbridge that spawned in a tree. They've added some guards to the roof of Varrock Palace, and they've increased the amount of moss giants in Varrock sewers. So today's update is very big. The Grand Exchange has come to Old School. Now for those of you that have seen my previous Grand Exchange videos, you know I'm probably not already a supporter of the Grand Exchange. However, I'm happy that they're introducing it as the 2007 version of the Grand Exchange, rather than the Grand Exchange RS3 currently has. If you want to discuss this update, please go on the forums or in my comments below. The Old School team would like to thank mod James H for lending his time to help test the Grand Exchange. And today's Thursday, so later today at 5 PM British time, there'll be an Old School developer Q&A on the RuneScape Twitch.tv channel. They'll be answering the most pressing questions from the Old School community then. And as always, if you've missed that, don't worry, you can watch it on their previous broadcasts, and they always put it on their YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share, and if you want to keep up to date with the Old School RuneScape updates, devlogs and polls, please subscribe. I've been Lewis, thanks for watching, goodbye.